Good morning and welcome to this video. My name is Lars Haukeland and I'm getting ready to record video number 6 in the series that I call Supernatural Warfare. Now this part number 6, is called What's So Terrible About Pride? And we'll be looking at that real soon. Now, uh, I've had problems with my PC this morning when I'm recording this, so I'm hoping that this will turn out okay and that I'll actually be able to stop the video when I'm finished recording. I've been having problems starting recording, so now that I finally am able to do that, let's see where we end up. Now, hopefully you've seen video number 1, the battle and the victory. Video number 2 was giving and gaining spiritual ground. Very, very important, very, very crucial for your spiritual warfare and your spiritual life. Video number 3, messing around in darkness. Video number 4 was looking back about unforgiveness and bitterness. And video number 5, which was the last video, is it's always right to get right. And we were looking at having a clear conscience, the problem of guilt, and also a bit on about rebellion. But today we're looking at pride, and I've got 5 points for you. Okay. First main point, pardon me. First main point is the original sin. Second main point is a sin of the heart. Point 3 is the worst sin. Point 4 is how to deal with pride or dealing with pride. Then the fifth and final point in this video is my way or God's way. And that's often the issue, isn't it? Is it my way or is it God's way? Is it God's way or is it the highway? Well, anyway, no, we normally say we do it my way or the highway. But when we are under the influence of the enemy, then sometimes there is a major turning point when we come to the realization that pride is the problem. Now, realizing that pride is the problem is important because then you know where to go next. Now, when we have pride in our lives, this is a base for the enemy where they can take ground from us because we give it to them, to the enemy, and they can build their strongholds on there. Okay. Um, and many times we need counseling when we have these problems. Okay. But many people, when they go to counseling and still after counseling, they're still prideful. It is a hard sin to recover from, and if you have it in your life, very often is there to stay, and it can be tough to deal with it. So the question I'm asking, the title of this video is, what is so terrible about pride? Well, I will try to answer this by looking at these 5 points that I have for this video, okay? Now, first of all, it is the original sin. It's the very first sin that we find, and we find it in the Bible, of course. Now, if you remember back to the beginning, even before the Garden of Eden, then we see that Lucifer, the son of the morning, he was jealous of God, and his pride led to rebellion against God. And you can say then that the very first sin that we see in the Bible originated in heaven, and that was pride. Go to Ezekiel, here, Ezekiel chapter 28. You know, there are two main scripture references for the original sin with Lucifer against God, and we find it in Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14. I've been touched on this in previous videos. I know I touched on this, both these places, in supernatural reality. So if you haven't watched the series called Supernatural Reality, I recommend that as well as this series, and of course the Believer's Armor. And of course, you find all this on my video blog. Now, Ezekiel chapter 28, let me read verse 17 for you. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Now, this is when Lucifer was coming with all these rebellious thoughts, and he says, I will do this and I will do that. As a matter of fact, let us turn to Isaiah chapter 14 and read this, okay? If I go to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, just read through verse 15. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, number one, I will ascend into heaven. Number two, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Point three, I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. Point four, I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. And point five, I will be like the Most High. Now, here we have the I wills of Lucifer, of the devil. And this, of course, like I said, this is the original sin. It was the first sin. And very often, when we stand before God, if we have pride in our lives, we're not going to get anywhere. Pride is the original sin, and this, like I said, happened before the Garden of Eden. Point two, it is a sin of the heart. A sin of the heart. Now, who was Lucifer talking to when he was saying this, I will that? He was talking to God. A disrespectful way to be talking to God, if you ask me. But, if you go back to Ezekiel, find that this was a sin of the heart, because it says in verse 17 that I was reading, thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. So the problem of pride was in his heart. And of course, I've been talking about this before, that the heart is talking about the thoughts, as it says in Proverbs 23:7, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So, if we are thinking special thoughts, or any thoughts really, the thoughts that we're thinking, they direct our path. If we have good thoughts, then we live a good life. If you have bad thoughts, we live a bad life. If you want to change your life, you have to change the way you're thinking first. You need to, if we are to change, we need to change the way we think, because we're not going to change the way we live before we change the way we think. Now, there is a suggestion from me to you of a personal Bible study if you want to. What do we say in our hearts? You could go and get a Bible concordance and look this up, and it's very interesting. But when we're prideful, then the enemy gains ground from us, and he builds his strongholds on there, on the lies that we have in our lives, you could say. And in spiritual warfare that we're talking about in this series, we are talking about how to tear down these strongholds. That's what we're looking at. Okay, how can we get rid of this in our lives? Now, Satan, he wants to be like God in many ways. He wants to be in control of your life, And also, he wants you to worship him. But he doesn't want to be like God in character, because God has a amazing character and character traits that are just good, but of course the enemy is not that. Okay, point 3, the worst sin. Now, why is pride so repugnant to God? It is like waving your fist in the face of God. If we go to Proverbs, let me see here. Proverbs chapter 6, and let me read there verses 16 and 17. Says, these 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. And he starts listing these up. I'll just read the first verse here. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. He goes on and says more, but I mean, I'm just interested in this first thing here in verse 17. What are these 7 things that are an abomination unto God? Well, firstly, it's a proud look. So pride is it's like sin number 1 that God hates. When we are prideful in our lives. If we go to chapter 8 and read verse 13, it says there, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. And it's a colon there. And first it says pride and arrogancy and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. But first on the list again is pride. So this is a serious sin. And we can see how this goes together with chapter 6 and verse 17. Pride makes us our own authority. You know, God wants to have authority over our lives. He wants to rule over us. But we don't want that. We want to be in control ourselves. So pride makes us our own authority instead of God. We try to take God's place in our lives. Okay? I go up a bit more here, up to Proverbs 16, verse 5 says, everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. Okay? And also verse number 18, still in Proverbs 16. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So we are constantly in the Bible reminded that pride is a bad thing. It is on list number 1 on the list. It's number 1 of the sins that God does not like, and that is an abomination to him. It's repugnant to him. And then we come to this biggest main point. Point number 4, dealing with pride. How do we deal with pride? Well, you know that humility is the opposite of pride. And if we have humility in our lives, that's kind of like, it's the antidote, you could say. Now, maybe you've read James's letter, his epistle in the New Testament. You know that James that wrote that epistle, he was Jesus's half-brother. You know, he could have started with that. When he was writing, he could have said, hey, I am James. I'm actually the half-brother of Jesus, you know. I'm not just anybody. But he didn't do that. He said, you know, I'm the servant of Christ. And servant of Christ really means a slave of Christ. And you might say, well, I don't care for the word slave. I don't want to be a slave to anybody. Well, the thing is that you are either in the devil's family or you are in God's family. So either you're a slave to the devil or you are a slave to God. It's just that you have to make this choice in your life. Who do you want to be a slave to? Because we're all slaving away for somebody. And often without knowing it. Now we can be boastful. James wasn't boastful. Sometimes we can be boastful, and I mentioned earlier an example. This guy that was in this movie. He was an extra in a movie, and he said, "Oh, did you see me in that movie?" And he was there only in the shot for a few seconds, and he was in the background. Didn't have a line, anything to say, or he was just an extra, but still, he felt like he was like a movie star. But also we can boast about people we've seen and things we've done, and actually, sometimes we do this on Facebook, don't we? We take a picture of some nice dinner and say, "Oh, I made that. Oh, I did that." And it's very easy for us to be boastful, and we need to deal with this. And how do we deal with this? Well, first of all, and I do like James. Now I'm going to turn to James in chapter 4 and verse 6, okay? And there is a very important wording here that I like. It says, more grace. Let me read James 4:6. But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace to the humble. So God gives grace to the humble. And that is, of course, when we are not proudful, because God resists the proud. He works against the proud, but it says in the beginning of the verse, he giveth more grace. Now, grace is, I know I said, I said this about something else, but grace is kind of like the antidote to pride. And in James 4:6, God is asking us, do we want more grace? Not just grace, but more grace. Now, grace is, of course, unmerited favor to God, or the unmerited favor of God. Love and mercy is also unmerited, and we can't find salvation without grace. Now, God is working in us. We see that in Philippians. Let's see if I can find Philippians here, chapter 1 and verse 6. It says, being confident of this very thing, that he which hath begun a good work in you will perform it unto the day of Jesus Christ. So God is working in us. He doesn't give up. He keeps working in us, and there's always a lot of work to do. And he's working in two ways. If we look at Philippians 2:13, it says, therefore it is God which worketh in you both to will and to do of his good pleasure. So what is he doing? How is he doing this? He works in two ways. He works, first of all, to will his good pleasure. Okay? He wills his good pleasure. He wants us to have his good pleasure, and he wants us to do his good pleasure. So he wants us not only to do what pleases him, but he wants us to want to do what pleases him. Okay? So he's working in us in two ways, you can say. The desire and the power to please him, that's what grace is, you know? So when God promises to give more grace, he is offering more desire and power than we need. Well, that sounds strange. But he's actually given more than we need. More grace. Not just grace, but more grace. More than we need. Now, the reason for defeat. Why do we uh, fall into pride? Why are there so many losers on the winning team? Hmm? Why is the church so full of defeated Christians? Why are so many Christians full of sin? And the question comes when you look at these things, has God failed us? No, he hasn't failed us. We have failed him. Pride is the problem. When pride gets into our lives, then uh, God he withholds his spiritual power. Go back to James chapter 4 and verse 6. Let me read it again. But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace to the humble. Okay? Uh, God resisteth the proud. He holds back his power in the lives of those that are proudful. Now, this is the reverse of Romans 8:31, if you think about it. Romans 8:31 says, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Now, if God is resisting you, does it matter uh, who is for you? That's kind of like turning it a bit. What did God do to Lucifer? Cast him out of heaven. Didn't want him there, because he was proudful. And it's an abomination to God when we're being proudful. So we need to look at submitting to God. And I know that as modern people, we don't like submitting to anybody. But that's the way to do it. That's the way to live if you want to have harmony in our lives. We always should be submitting to somebody, and we should be submitting, first of all, to God. The key to dealing with pride, I'm going to go back to James chapter 4 here. Let me read verse 7 now. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. We have to submit to God. Submitting to God and resisting the devil. Now, about resisting Satan. Some people say, oh, I have tried to do that, but just it doesn't work. Well, we don't do it ourselves. It has to be on God's terms. It has to be God that does this. Are we willing to submit to God? Are we willing to rank ourselves under God's authority? Then he will help us. We need to follow God's plan. We need to say yes to God and not to ourselves. We need to have that authority of God in our lives and not our own authority. Now, Isaiah chapter 55, Isaiah 55, verse 8 says, for my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. So, God's ways are not our ways. We need to say yes to God and submit to God. And, God is so much wiser than us. And we have to admit that we don't know why certain things are happening. We just need to trust God to get us through the uh, the things that happen in our lives. We just need to trust in God because God knows what's best for us. We don't. We really don't. So the question is really, who is in charge of your life? We're either in submission to God or we are resisting Him. So there is no such thing as that, this doesn't have anything to do with my life. That's not the case. We're either submitting to God or we're resisting God. There is no middle way here. And that actually, I'm very surprised that I've come up to the fifth and final point of this video. So this might be the shortest video I've made in a long time. My way or God's way. My way or the highway, as I say. But why do we um, why are we so prideful? And how do we rid ourselves of pride? Well, the thing is that we need to crucify it. Okay? We need to put it up on the cross and leave it there. That's where we need to leave our pride. We go to Luke chapter 9 and verse 23. Jesus says, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." So we need to pick up our crosses, not just once, not just twice or thrice. We need to pick up our crosses every day. Every day we need to surrender to God. Every day we need to make a conscious decision of following God. And we do this by faith in the Son of God. Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20 says, "I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me, and the life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and gave himself for me." Okay, so you say that we are crucified with Christ. Our sin has been crucified. Our pride should be part of that. That's been crucified, and we've kind of like we left the old sinful life behind us, and we have uh, started a new life because now, as we are Christians, Christ lives in us, and now we live in the faith of the Son of God. So that's the way we can do it, by faith in the Son of God. Now we need to kind of like take some advice from the Old Testament, where it says that you should write up, the Word of God, and you should hang it up on uh, your you should hang it up on your house. You should hang it up on yourself. You should always remember the Word of God. And, this is a tremendous advice to us. Why don't we take Luke chapter 9, verse 23, write it up on a piece of paper and hang it, maybe in the bedroom, maybe in the bathroom, maybe somewhere else. I remember once I was studying for an exam and I was hanging up all these things that I had to remember and know by heart. And I had something on every window, I had something on every door. But maybe we should write up Luke 9:23 and hang it up so that we could see it, so that we're constantly reminded about it, so that we remember that we should pick up our crosses daily and follow Jesus. Okay. Now going back to, you read that in Luke chapter 9. Let's look at the next verse, what Jesus says next. For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. We can't do both. Again, we have to make a choice. We need to make choices in our lives. Do we want to follow Jesus? Do we want to pick up our crosses daily? Do we want to leave our pride on the cross, nailed onto the cross, with all our other sins that Jesus conquered and died for when he died upon that cross? We can't do both. Either we choose God, or we choose to be against God. We can't both submit to God and be in rebellion to him, you could say. So we have a choice to make. Now, I've been having problems, as I say, with this recording, but because I am missing some of my notes. I used to have a blog in English where I had more parts of this supernatural warfare, and I do believe that part number 7 is called something like sexual bondage. But right now I can't find my notes. I can't find my books. I don't know if the enemy is fighting me or if it's just me getting old and confused. But I might even have to order something in before I can continue this series. But most likely next time that I make an English video, I'll be looking at the Olivet Discourse. Okay. And I don't know why my phone is doing that, but I didn't get that. Could you try again? By the way. Okay. This is weird. But I hope that this, I'm not going to try and record this video again because of my phone starting to talk to me. But, if you go to revlarsvideos.wordpress.com, you can see all my English videos. Then you can see what you want to, if there's anything there you want to watch. As I say, I will start a different series, but I will continue on spiritual warfare or supernatural warfare when I get all my notes and everything together. But it might take a little while, especially if I got to order in something, some material. But I hope that these 6 videos can be a good starting point for you. And also together with the believer's armor and the supernatural reality, and also these individual videos that are made. I hope that this can be a great help for you. I hope that God will bless you and be with you and strengthen you and give you the wisdom you need to be able to fight your spiritual warfare in your life. And we can win over the enemy, like we said. If we do this, if we stand our ground, then the devil will flee from us. We need to put on that armor. We need to get out there, not just give up, but know that we can do anything through Christ. So don't give up, and hopefully before too long I'll be continuing giving out more videos in this series. But for the moment, I gotta find I gotta find my study material. Uh, but the Oliver Discourse probably in about 2 weeks. Right. God be with you.